Um, so welcome everyone to our Green Sunday about the Left Unity Slate and the June 7th election. We have 4 speakers scheduled to present this evening. There's Gary Blenner, Meghann Adams, hopefully Mohammed will get on soon, and Laura Wells. I'll give a brief introduction to each of them and then we can get started. So Gary Blenner has been a social science high school teacher for the past 28 years. In 2006, as a registered Green, Gary got elected as a trustee to the Center Joint Union School District School Board. And in 2012 and 2016, he ran for the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. His current campaign for California Secretary of State focuses on election reform and corporate accountability. He wants the office to be a voice for a fairer, more transparent, and inclusive elections process in California. Meghann Adams has been a tireless organizer of anti-war and anti-racist actions in the San Francisco area for 15 years. She's been a school bus driver for 7 years, active in SMART 1741, the union representing school bus drivers in San Francisco and San Mateo counties. She was elected president of the union last year. She is running for California treasurer to represent working people and is a socialist and a Peace and Freedom Party member. Meghann considers capitalism the reason why poverty is still so common today. Mohammed Arif is running for lieutenant governor, and he also is the current county chair of the Peace and Freedom Party. He and his wife are both immigrants from the Punjab, and he has a master's degree in economics from Punjab University. He's worked as a legal administrator for law firms to handle the legal needs of immigrants for many years. He speaks English, Punjabi, Urdu, and Hindi with some Arabic. And in 2013, he ran for state senate in a special election. And finally, Laura Wells is a political activist in California and in solidarity with Latin America. She lives in Oakland and has been an organizer and a candidate for the Green Party and is running again for state controller this year. She also ran for Congress in 2018 and for governor after the global financial meltdown in 2010. As a former financial systems analyst, Laura focuses her platform on taxing the rich, public banking, reforming Proposition 13, and saving money and lives with an improved Medicare for all healthcare system. So our first speaker will be Gary Blenner. It's yours, Gary.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. And I'd like to say there we are. I think I'm unmuted, hopefully. Can everybody hear me? Very good. Okay. So I also wanted to say hello to my other fellow candidates on the Left Unity Slate. And glad to be running with all of you. I thought I would talk about what exactly does Secretary of State, what exactly does the job entail, and why is it so important? Why am I running for it? What am I doing in that regard? So Secretary of State is sometimes referred to as kind of the business manager for California, in that it is supposed to run the election system and oversee the election system, and it has some sort of oversight with regards to, I don't know if there's no sound on my part or there's no sound for everything. I have no idea. But anyhow, it's supposed to oversee the election system and kind of have some sort of oversight for the local counties and how the county registrars actually conduct their elections. It is also supposed to handle all of the record statistics, birth certificates, incorporation papers for the entire state of California. It also runs the California Museum. It oversees notary publics. It's sort of the clearinghouse of what they would generally refer to in other countries, for example, in Great Britain, as the Home Secretary. When I tell people sometimes I'm running for Secretary of State, they get all excited like I'm going to be traveling around the world and deal with diplomacy and everything else. And I have to tell them, no, I'm not running for the U.S. Secretary of State. It's just for the state of California. It's a completely different office. And furthermore, Secretary of States have now come under attack because of the Trumpian wing of the Republican Party, which, for all intents and purposes, is basically now the entire Republican Party, as Trump has kind of bullied everybody into kissing his behind going forward. So a lot of these Secretary of States have come under attack because they're not counting the votes the way that Trump would like them to count the votes. And so it is really a very serious office, for which I have actually made election integrity one of the areas that I'm running for. I have said publicly, in fact, I mentioned this recently, I had a email interview with the NBC station in San Diego, in which I said one of the ways to preserve election integrity is to make sure that we pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which would restore some of the invalid measures of the previous Voting Rights Act from 1965, but basically guarantee a minimum amount of ballot access and accountability nationwide, so that no matter who holds the office, they have to maintain a certain minimal amount of integrity. I think, by the way, I'm off on a complete tangent here. The supposed leading Republican for the office, Rachel Hamm, is totally in the hands of Donald Trump. It would be an absolute danger and travesty if she actually ended up holding the job. She has said some pretty weird and dangerous things about counting votes. But in any event, that is what the Secretary of State's office does. And in my campaign, I want it to be more than just somebody who was holding some sort of clerical position. I want it to become a position of advocacy. And I'm using my candidacy as a vehicle for the type of change that we need to see here in California. So the first thing that I'm running on is the idea of proportional representation in the state assembly based on political party. This is obviously the system that they have in Europe. We have some members within our party right now that are working on a constitutional amendment ballot initiative for November of 24, the Representation for the People's Act, that would increase the size of the assembly to 240 members. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, wow, Gary, that's a lot. Yes, it is. I will point out that California, now approaching 40 million people, has more people in it than in all of Canada, by the way. We are almost twice the size of Australia. If you were to go to the Canadian House of Commons, they've got 308 people in there. And in the Australian House of Representatives, which again is roughly half the size of California, they've got 150. We only have 80, and we've only increased it once in statehood. And it's absolutely ridiculous. If you go by the concept of the way that Thomas Jefferson wanted representation in state government, if you go by what he wanted, he basically wanted citizen legislatures in which you could have the entire voting block in one room and basically conduct a town hall meeting in which, you know, outside interests and money would be totally irrelevant. And you could have a discussion with your voting block, and they would then take a vote, and then they would give marching orders and basically say to the state representative, now you listen to us, we want you to go to the state capitol and vote this way, because otherwise you're going to double cross the people in this room and we'll vote you out. And that's how grassroots democracy was originally supposed to work, at least envisioned by Thomas Jefferson. You have an educated populace, they're kept abreast on everything happening in state government. You get all of your voting block in one room and you give marching orders to that individual. And Jefferson was very concerned about that the larger the districts, the more and more apt you're going to be corrupted by money and outside influence. And that is exactly what has happened. We've got assembly districts now that are approaching 500,000 people, and state senate districts that are 1 million people. There is no way that you're going to fit the entire voting block in one room and have a town hall discussion on what's taking place. So I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibilities, or out of the realm of of democracy to have a 240 member assembly that would truly represent the people of California, and that we would have that based upon proportional representation. Let's have a state legislature that balance off the interests of single member districts in the state Senate versus regional interests in the state assembly, because otherwise bicameral legislatures have absolutely no purpose at the state level other than to slow down legislation. I mean, at the federal level, you're representing states versus, balancing off the interests of the people between the Senate and the House of Representatives. It makes no sense whatsoever. No sense whatsoever at the state level. Here, it would actually make sense and have a purpose. And at 5% of the vote is having a threshold, it would give Greens and other parties an opportunity to actually participate in the process. And rather than having coalitions just to get elected, just to get across the finish line, which is absolutely disastrous, because that's what the Democrats have done. That's exactly, how Joe Manchin is in the US Senate. It's like, we just want to cross the finish line, Joe. So say anything you want in Virginia, just because we need you to get a majority in the Senate. Then when it comes time to governing, the Democrats or whoever's in power can't get anything done. It's like Joe Manchin decides, I will single-handedly hold up, an infrastructure bill, and some watered down version of the Green New Deal, but it's something. And Joe Manchin saying, no, forget it, we're not going to do it. You don't have coalitions to govern. You've got coalitions just across the finish line, and nothing can ever get done. But with proportional representation, you can actually build coalitions to actually govern. Because what happened in Germany, which, by the way, the Greens did really well in Germany last September, they dramatically increased the number of seats. They were then able to force the Social Democrats and tell them, you want our support on X and X ideas, you need to make concessions in our direction. And so you have coalitions to govern, not coalitions just to get elected, just to cross the finish line. So that's the first thing. Secondary thing is ranked choice voting for all other races in California for which you are electing one person, or what we call a single member district. You can, in essence, then eliminate the primary, give people more choice on the November ballot. And then you can tell people, look, because, when I go out tabling, I have had angry people come up to me saying, like, I single-handedly, you elected George W. Bush. You're the reason why this is all happening. Presumably because our nominee, Ralph Nader, split the vote in Florida. And I say to them, okay, well then, get on board with electoral reform. Bring about ranked choice voting. Then you can never, ever split the vote again. Right? And it gives people the opportunity not to vote for the lesser of two evils, or to hold their nose and do that, but to actually then rank their choice. Okay, I really favor progressivism. I believe in socialism. I'm going to rank this candidate number one. And if they don't make it, then it will then go to my second or third choice. Let people truly vote how they feel. They shouldn't have to go with the less evil of what is out there, some evil of a binary choice, which has the effect, by the way, of contributing to the polarization that we have in this country. Third thing I'm running on is to have public financing of campaigns. Let's get all of this corporate money, this PAC money, what I like to call them, the sugar daddies and sugar mamas, the donor class. Thank you. I'm almost out of time. Let's get that out of politics. The fourth thing is to end corporate personhood. We need statewide constitutional amendments to go on record to say corporations do not have the same rights as individuals. By the way, for my campaign, I'm starting TV commercials. Should be starting, I think, tomorrow or Tuesday. They're going to run in San Francisco, Berkeley, Sacramento, and Santa Cruz. If I get more donations, I can start in other places. But I'm running here to win. And it won't take that much more effort, by the way, to possibly, if the candidates split, I'm assuming Shirley Weber, the corporate Democratic opponent, I'm assuming she's going to get close to half the vote. If the other candidates can split evenly, why not? Why can't our campaign get even with single digits, leap into second place. It is possible. I'm running to do that. I'm running to win. Thank you very much. I didn't mean to go over, but thank you all very much.
Thank you, Gary. Luis Rodriguez, who originally wasn't going to be able to make it, but then a last-minute schedule change came up, and he's now arrived. So let me give Luis a short introduction, and then Luis, you can speak for a bit, and then we'll get back to the other speakers. So, folks, Luis is the author of 16 books of poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and children's books, and was named the Poet Laureate of Los Angeles in 2014. He previously was employed in a series of working class jobs, including as a truck driver, carpenter, welder, millwright, and working in a paper mill, a lead foundry, a chemical refinery, and a steel mill. His writing has resulted in a number of awards, including the Los Angeles Times Robert Kirsch Lifetime Achievement Award and a Lila Wallace Reader's Digest Writers Award. Luis was also the Green Party governor candidate in 2014. Luis, go ahead.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. And I'll be short, but I think it's very powerful that we have this Left Unity Slate, that we have people that are going to represent those issues that nobody else is going to represent on any of these candidates. I love what was being said earlier, as I heard. We need to have a very viable, credible place in the state. And I've heard from people who say that they don't trust the electoral arena, it's corrupt, it's inept, and I have to agree with them. But I do have to point out that we can't let it be that way. We have to occupy all these spaces. We cannot let these spaces be taken over by the corporations. That's what's happened. Almost every space is taken over by them. Even the social media space, as you know, Elon Musk is trying to buy Twitter. All of them are being owned by billionaires. We have no spaces where we really truly have our voices and we can raise issues such as the end of poverty, such as the end of homelessness, such as the abolition of mass incarceration, such as ending deadly police practices, such as having an environment with clean air, clean water, clean soil. I can go on down the line because these are the issues that I know most people believe in. Poll after poll shows that most people are actually much more radical thinking than they're letting people know. But they have nowhere to go. As was mentioned, the Democrats and the Republican, the binary system is not adequate to fully respond to the issues that we're dealing with. The Republicans have gone completely alienated. They've alienated everybody. They don't care. They've become a power in themselves. They've consolidated crazy pretty much, even though I think it's all by design. But the Democrats have proven to be inept and don't deliver and won't deliver. We can't, and I'm not saying that there's not Democrats that we can bring over to this, what we're doing here. I think there's a lot of disaffected Democrats. A lot of independents are discontented. I think we need to be the voice that all of them can say, I want to be behind this candidacies, this Left Unity Slate, because we represent what nobody else is going to do. There are huge gaps in this state, and we know the richest state and the richest country in the world, with huge gaps that shouldn't exist. We got to fill those gaps. And so my campaign is imagine a new California for shared well-being, then let's build it. I also shorten it to imagine and build and or dream and deliver. We need the big dream, the big imagination, and we need the big delivery, the big implementation. And I think with all the candidates on the slate, if we can get, as was mentioned earlier, the second highest vote getters in all these positions, we would be in a position to challenge the current state, the status quo right now, all the way to November. Because Governor Newsom has to be challenged. He has to be challenged on his positions or lack of positions on single-payer healthcare, which he completely didn't talk about why they killed it in the legislature, or what he did vetoing the farm workers' ability to have mail-in ballots so they can have union representation. There's the way that he's kind of caved in to the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant where they were supposed to close it, but now he's waffling about whether he wants to close it or not. We can go on down the line. This is supposed to be the most liberal, progressive candidate the Democrats have ever had, and yet there's huge gaps, and we need to fill those gaps. So let me just say, I don't want to say too much more other than say, I'm honored to be part of the Left Unity Slate. I really believe in the candidates that are there. I believe we have an opportunity, a historical opportunity, to change the dynamics of politics in the state of California. And we can do it now. We don't have to wait for a long time. We can mobilize and organize now. I have support from all over the state, but what's really impressive to me is the growing momentum among just community people, especially young people who didn't want to vote and didn't even know they should vote, and now are getting ideas that maybe there's a reason to vote. We've given them that reason. So thank you all. I appreciate you giving me the time. I think we should listen to the others, and I wish you all the best. Let's just make this happen. Let's make this a powerful, mobilizing, organizing tool for the future and for now. Thank you.
Okay, Megan, you're next.
Okay. Well, thank you. I guess I did want to start by thanking the Green Party for having me on this evening to talk about my campaign and the struggles that I believe we're committed in fighting together. Just because it's so prescient in all of our minds, I hope, I have to start talking about the events of this last week, which for many has really shined a spotlight on how this system really works. The leaked draft opinion, heroically shared by unknown sources, told us what we already knew, that the right-wing majority of these life-termed, unelected decision makers at the Supreme Court are ready to throw us back 50 years, overturn Roe v. Wade, and strip away the fundamental right to abortion from over 160 million people. But in a moment when the Democrats are up in arms because this opinion is going too far, and they're talking on all platforms about the importance of protecting Roe, they're completely ignoring the fact that just a few months ago, the Women's Health Protection Act was before Congress, which would have protected the right to abortion for all at the national level. And this in a federal government dominated by Democrats. This bill was allowed to fall by the wayside. And on the other side, right-wing Republicans have seen this as an opportunity to roll back the clock on everything they can get away with and really undercut and roll back the hard-won rights of working and oppressed peoples. Not only are some states considering bills that would criminalize those who seek abortions, from the Louisiana bill that would charge those who get an abortion with murder, to the states that are targeting those who would get abortion pills from other states. But Texas Governor Greg Abbott has also suggested that the state challenge the 1982 ruling that free education must be provided to all, including those of undocumented immigrants. So if something is pivotal as Roe is struck down, this could be the start of a major backlash. There's a lot of hand-wringing now, but in critical moments this last year, like when SCOTUS first decided to take up the Dobbs v. Jackson women's health case, and when the vote on WPHA failed, we were basically told to be patient, that these things would work out in the end. But that's not how things work. If we want to win, we need to fight. And that is what has been so empowering looking at just the last few days since the draft opinion was leaked. Thousands have taken to the streets to defend our right to legalized abortion. And what we need, the lesson we take from the history of struggle, is that we need to build the movement. That when we mobilize, when we stand together, we are strong, and that's how we win. So how does this relate to my campaign? My campaign for state treasurer is focused on this clear demand. We need to end poverty in California. And one part of achieving that is recognizing that healthcare is a human right and that abortion access is an essential part of healthcare. That every single one of us fundamentally is entitled to free quality healthcare for all our stages of life. We live in a state and in a system of appalling absurdities. California is the wealthiest state in the country, and it would be the 5th wealthiest country in the world if it was autonomous. Yet over 1/3 of our residents live in or near poverty. And with the end of the federal child tax credit, child poverty jumped 41%. Our biggest perpetual reason for poverty is the high cost of rent, and the #1 reason people file for bankruptcy is because of medical bills. On Friday, I woke up to a breaking news alert celebrating April as the 12th consecutive month in which employers added more than 400,000 jobs, with a wage growth of 5.5%. This is ignoring the rest of reality, where 5.9 million people in this country are still unemployed, which is nearly 1 million more than before the pandemic, and the inflation on everyday necessities has risen to 8.5%. So this isn't a report to celebrate. There are literally millions who are still kept down through unemployment, and the rest of us are sinking as our wages don't get us nearly as much as they used to. And instead of getting any real relief, money is funneled into those who oppress us. As was reported in The Guardian last month, multiple major California cities used COVID relief money from the American Rescue Plan Act, meant for services like public health and housing initiatives, infrastructure investments, and aid for small businesses, and allocated it to police and sheriff departments. San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Long Beach allocated at least 50% to their police and sheriff's departments, while Fresno, San Jose, Oakland, and Sacramento all allocated significantly less. They each all funneled millions of dollars of COVID relief money to their police. And as we're moving towards the end of a world public health crisis, but we're still in the midst of an economic crisis, we have seen more of the racist and anti-poor campaigns against those left asleep on the streets. It was under the pretense of combating the fentanyl epidemic in the Tenderloin that San Francisco Mayor London Breed was able to push through a state of emergency through the Board of Supervisors and flood the streets downtown with cops. This is the same sort of thing that is happening in cities across the state and the country of terrorizing, imprisoning, or further displacing those who have no permanent home. We're also still plagued by a climate crisis, one that locally means preparing for longer and more dangerous fire seasons due to the ongoing drought. The National Interagency Fire Center and CAL FIRE are preparing for, quote, the absolute worst fire season this year, as the ongoing drought has already led to more than 1,700 acres burned above this time last year, despite the lower number of total fires so far. And at the same time, CalPERS and CalSTRS, the retirement systems for California teachers and public employees, have over $40 billion invested in fossil fuels, and who say that these investments are to put pressure on gas companies to, quote, ensure an equitable, prosperous, and low carbon world for future generations. A real investment in our future would be to pull out of those extractive and destructive industries and put the money into actions that combat climate change. The call to end poverty in California was raised during the 1934 governor campaign of activist and writer Upton Sinclair. He was running for governor during the middle of the Great Depression, and with a program to provide work to the 700,000 unemployed residents, pensions to seniors, and the establishment of a cooperative economy focused on production for use rather than for profit. His plan and his program saw him win 38% in the November election in the state, because that's how much that message, that need resonated with people. And nearly 90 years later, that message still resonates with all of us, because we are still struggling to meet our basic needs with a sense of dignity. We are at a crossroads, and I hope that if you're joining us tonight, that means that you agree with us that it's a time for a change, that it's time to put the needs of people first and not profits. This means divesting from fossil fuels and focusing on strengthening our ecological systems, not just the work that needs to be done to prevent fires, but also changes how our water is managed in the agricultural sector. PG&E has repeatedly proven itself to be criminally negligent, from the San Bruno pipe explosion to the northern towns ravaged by fires of their causing. The company should be taken over by the state, and any repairs or upgrades to the infrastructure be prioritized to protect the safety of all. We should be fully funding our schools, and that means paying our teachers enough so they can afford to live where they work, expanding programs and services to ensure all our students are supported in their education, and investing in the maintenance of the buildings themselves, as some locally can attest to the dire situation of some of our schools who are serving our most vulnerable communities. And while we aren't yet able to abolish landlordism, we should make sure that we are treating housing as a human right. And this means not only ending evictions and rolling back rents, but also housing the homeless, where we already have more than enough vacant units available right now, and cleaning up the communities who are impacted by environmental pollutants. And of course, to go back to where I started, we should be fully funding comprehensive healthcare for every single person, because healthcare is a right, and everyone should be able to get the care they need. No one should go into debt for trying to take care of themselves, or worse, put off treatment because they know they won't be able to afford that bill from the hospital when it arrives in the mail. And making this a reality is completely doable right now. Because I'm sure someone is going to ask, can I set all of these changes into action as state treasurer? Not alone, no. But that's just part of why we're running together. Because together we can make a difference. And even if just one of us slips through this rigged electoral system, that's one more person in a position of power who is actually from the people, fighting for the people, and encouraging us not to be complacent and accept things how they are, but to organize and fight for ourselves. All of these things are what brought us here tonight are fighting for in our campaigns and beyond. What we need is socialism, not capitalism, people over profits. We're running in these elections to speak up for what people really need and want, to remind us that we're not stuck with being forced to choose what we hope is the lesser of two evils. We can vote for what we believe in. And we cannot just stop with voting. We need to be building a movement and building the struggle. A movement to fight for better wages and defend workers' rights, to combat climate change, a movement against racism and bigotry, to dismantle the police state and the detention centers, and a movement to defend abortion and protect Roe v. Wade. So I hope that you choose to vote for all of us this June and to spread the word to your friends and family and coworkers. But I do, even more than that, hope you join us in the struggle. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meghann. Our next speaker will be Mohammed Arif, as our candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Go ahead, Mohammed. Unmute, you got to unmute.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Mohammed Arif. I'm a candidate for Lieutenant Governor of California in June 7th primary election. Can you hear me? Hello?
Sounds good. We hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Mohammed Arif. I'm a candidate for Lieutenant Governor of California in the June 7th primary election. Supported my own Peace and Freedom Party and happy to have support of many Green Party members up and down the state. I am a member of the Left Unity Slate of candidates for state of California. I support them and they support me. So let me figure everyone to vote for the entire Left Unity Slate. And I have all the candidates here. I would like to take their names. Luis Rodriguez for governor. Me, Mohammed Arif for Lieutenant Governor, Gary Blenner for Secretary of State, Laura Wells for Controller, Meghann Adams for Treasurer, and for Attorney General is Dan, Natalie Reyes for Insurance Commissioner, Marco Emerald for Insurance, for Superintendent of Public Inspection, of Public Instruction, and John Parker for the United States Senate. My education is in commerce, economics, and law, beginning in the Punjab, where I learned Punjabi, Urdu, English, and many other languages, including Arabic. While my education continued in California, I can say that my education in California politics has largely taken place in the Peace and Freedom Party, to which I was attached and attracted because it's seriously for peace and freedom, as its name shows. It favors empowering working people, strongly oppose discrimination against immigrants, an important issue to my family and community, and many others in this state. I am presently chairperson of Kern County Peace and Freedom Party. The question Peace and Freedom Party asked when I faced with the political issues, what is good for working people? Peace is good for working people. Prosperity is good for working people. Healthy environment is good for working people. Higher wages, including a higher minimum wage, are good Real democracy, the empowerment of working people is clearly good. Working people are hurt by racism and discrimination, by injustice, by oppression. For over a century, California has been ruled by Republicans and Democrats. Sure, under pressure for millions of Californians, the government sometimes does good things, but at all times, including these days when all statewide offices are held by Democrats, the interest of the super wealthy few override in interest of the many. Never the never, never are the interest of the privileged. The action of our state government is not regular for the people. The people vote, but somehow the big corporation and unchallenged power. I believe that this can change if more Californians can come to understand that voting for candidates like those of our Left Unity Slate can lead to real change. That change will come whether from the Peace and Freedom Party of or Green Party. Our candidates are not beholden to the corporate elite and greed. Meghann Adams, our candidate, just spoke to the treasurer using a slogan first put forward in 1934 during the height of Great Depression and poverty in California. I also subscribe to this slogan, as do all the members of our Left Unity Slate. And the sad fact is that today there are more people in poverty in California than there were in 1934. Far more people living without housing, and a far large share of what Californians own is owned by the wealthy elite and richest people. Why are these things true? Let us look at who holds power in Sacramento. Much attention has been paid to Rick Caruso, the billionaire developer who is running for mayor of Los Angeles. Anyone who really believes in putting a billionaire developer in charge of housing the unhoused may be in for a rude awakening if he is elected. In fact, he has spent decades providing money for the campaign of both Democrats and Republicans to make sure that his economic interests are not threatened. But he is not the only one. My opponent, Eleni, who is the present lieutenant governor, comes from the fantastically wealthy family of developer. And for some years, she headed their development corporations. But then she went into politics to represent her family's economic interest in Sacramento. She is Democrat, but she is just as dedicated as any other Republican landowner or developer to making sure that the ultra wealthy continue to rule. The housing is for profit interest instead of public good and welfare. And that the interests of working people are the best and afterthought of our state government. While Democrats hold all elected statewide offices, not a one of them is willing to challenge corporate rule. Neither are any of the Republican candidates in the present election. Our country should be dedicated to peace. We should avoid war, promote international understanding, and work to include the whole world in prosperity and cooperation. This is hardly the basic responsibility of the Lieutenant Governor of California, but I note that the present Lieutenant Governor includes in her statement in the ballot pamphlet words about leading delegations to international meetings and to Mexico, India, and Armenia. So perhaps the lieutenant governor needs a foreign policy after all. But I become lieutenant governor, I will devote my international efforts to remain and ruining the wealth elite who in the country after country find profit in conflicts instead of peace. In environmental destruction, in the empowerment of the many, we need peace in our neighborhood and peace in our world. Thank you for your time. God bless America. God bless California. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohammed. Okay, and our fourth and final speaker will be Laura Wells, running for state controller. Go ahead.
Thank you. As all the other candidates have said, I am so glad that we're doing the Left Unity Slate this year and that we're combining the candidates from both the Green Party and the Peace and Freedom Party. So I'm running for controller, and that's my favorite spot because to me, if the money's off, it's all off. And the job of a controller, basically, I see as to follow the money and report to the boss, and the boss is the public. And so it's the bookkeeper. The treasurer basically does the investing. It's the money position that does the investing. So as Meghann was saying, is forget fossil fuels. And the controller is the one that counts the money coming in, the money going out. And also does audits and sits on a lot of boards. Now, on the boards, that would be a place where I would constantly be bringing up that the banking that we need to do as California is public banking up and down the state, at the state level, regional level, and the city level. And it's about time that we actually get moving on that. There's been a big movement toward public banking. I know that I was first introduced to it in 2010 when I ran for governor. And that was 12 years ago. And so there have been some baby steps, that California has actually passed some laws that will enable it to happen and all of that stuff, but it's time to have it happen because we would save a lot of money that we would be able to invest in California and not in Wall Street. So for those of you who don't know what public banking is, there actually is a state bank in North Dakota, and it's been there for more than 100 years. 1919 is when it started, when the farmers were tired of doing all the work and having the out-of-state banks take all the money and then take their farms. So they thought, no, we'll do it ourselves. So California has plenty of capital to create its own bank. And what would happen with infrastructure projects, often infrastructure like the Bay Bridge, the recent replacement of one of the spans. A lot of times what happens with those is that 40% of the total cost is interest. Now, if you funded it yourself, if the region funded it through the State Bank of California, then the interest would be lower, and the interest that was spent would be paid back into California, invested back into this state. So public banking is an extremely important thing, and I'd be pushing that constantly. The other things that tax the super rich, and I say super rich just because some people get confused and they think they're rich. But no, we're talking about, the rest of us, the 99%, have been taxed pretty highly. That's another reason why other people think, well, I don't know, we shouldn't tax people anymore. No, that's because we're getting taxed. And the super rich are not getting taxed. So tax them. And Medicare for all at the state level. Just to be real specific about what the Democrats did, and I try to say this whenever I get a chance, they had campaign promises about single payer or improved Medicare for all, a Democratic super trifecta, which means the governorship and supermajorities in both houses. They have a budget surplus. This was at the beginning of this year. They still have a budget surplus. We've been in a pandemic for a couple of years. There was a bill that was put forth to implement it. And sometimes they say, well, yeah, there's a bill to implement, but there isn't a bill to fund. There was a bill to fund it, and they would not bring it to a vote so that nobody knows where their representatives stand, or their governor, or any of the Democratic Party statewide offices, of which they have all of them. And yet, during the 7 years that our action hero, Schwarzenegger, was governor, they put it on the Democratic legislature, put it on his desk twice. Now, how many times did they put it in the past 12 years on the desks of Democratic governors Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom? 0, easy to guess. So that is one of the places that, one of the other things, so the public boards, I mentioned that there are a lot of boards that the controller is on. Another thing is audit. And rather than audit the little agencies to make sure that they accounted properly for the money that came in and the money that came out, what we need to do is audit the huge questions. And one of those would be, as somebody that called me up recently about the campaign, why do you think they didn't pass the CalCare, the Medicare for All Act? Gee, I wonder, let's find out and do an audit on that. What happened? Why? And then, trace all the money. And there are websites that help us to do that. But why don't we have healthcare for all? That would save money and lives. To me, that's a key value in following the money, is that it should relate to our values. And the values, it's life. So basically, save money and lives. We could do that with healthcare for all. Schools, what happened? What happened? Just follow. Why didn't, even going way back when, why didn't the lottery solve all the schools' problems? It was supposed to do that a long time ago. All it did was help to impoverish people who already didn't have much of an opportunity. So audit that. What happened to the schools, where we had the greatest schools, like world-class school system, and now we're in the bottom of the per pupil spending in the bottom few states. Audit how much school costs compared to how much it costs to keep somebody in prison, and how much of our budgets have been going from schools to prisons, not to mention the police, as Meghann pointed out. How cost effective have we been spending money in terms of, and what future do we envision for our kids when we're building more prisons than schools? Also, California, speaking of fossil fuels, is one of the few oil producing states that does not have an oil severance tax. So when they take it out of the ground or out of the water or wherever they take it, they don't have to pay taxes on it in California. I mean, Texas has it, Alaska, all the other states have it, and California does not. Although I read something that said they don't have a significant one, so maybe they have some pitiful little one. The public power, audit that. Audit how much money we would save, and how many lives, and how much of the planet that we have allocated as California. How much would we save with that? So I'm going to keep this short, I think. And I say that, and one of the things that the bottom line that people come to over and over and over again, in terms of what do we need to do to address the problems that we have. And it's build a huge movement. We need a huge movement. We need to find, we in the world, in the California, in this Zoom, need to find ways for us to connect together to move forward on those things that we have in common. And I'm thrilled to pieces personally that Green Party became put eco-socialism in our platform. So we have that there because capitalism has not done anything for any of us. So I'll end it with saying that the Left Unity Slate to me is one of those examples, and to the other people who have spoken, it's one of those examples of where we are coming together, connecting where we can in order to build toward, on the values that we agree with and to build forward on that. And so whatever we can do to build the movement, terrific. And hasta la victoria siempre. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura and Mohammed, Megan, Luis, Gary. Great to hear from all of you. My name is Justin. I'll be moderating the discussion period of our event tonight, which is starting right now. Just a couple of simple rules. One is please remember to keep your comments on the issues and ideas, not personal attacks or anything that sounds like name calling. And secondly, keep your comments or questions to 2 minutes, please, so we can hear from as many people as we can. And I'll be keeping the stack. So if you would use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, I guess it's under the reactions button, and then click on raise hand. That will be a great way for me to help keep the order. And I see a few hands coming up already. So the first one I see is Michael and Jan. Go ahead and unmute yourself and let's hear your comment.
Thank you, Justin. I just wanted to ask Gary a question about electoral reform. I think everyone here is aware of how much damage Top 2 has done the small parties. And I want to hear what he thinks he can do or should do about Top 2 if he were elected Secretary of State. Over.
Well, you have to remember that unless there's a change in the law, that Top 2 is the way our election system operates. As I said at the outset, my candidacy is a vehicle for change, and I want the office to be an office of advocacy. So I would come out, unlike our current appointed Secretary of State, I would come out and actually say that Top 2 has to go. I have not heard Shirley Weber say anything to that regard. It has to go immediately. I would come out and do what I could. The only way to change that, because it was passed through an initiative, is either through another initiative to repeal it or through a state constitutional amendment. And I think the best way to do that is to incorporate that into what the Green Party is planning on putting forward for November of 24, and that is the Representation of the People's Act, which in essence would get rid of Top 2. So I would go around the state and what I perceive as a new role as Secretary of State, and go around and campaign and say, we need to get rid of this. There is nobody from the governor on down to any member of the elected statewide officers going around saying we need to get rid of Top 2.
Indeed.
And I think that's extremely important, because some of the other people talking about how we need to do something about single payer healthcare, we need to do something about all of these other issues. That cannot be done until we fix the election system, until we bring more voices into the process, and we'll begin the process to build coalitions to get things done, not just across the finish line. So I would use the office. I think that my victory as Secretary of State would be the catalyst. It would be the leading edge of a green wave, of a eco-socialist or socialist wave for electoral reform and change. I think just having that victory would send a message to everybody else, and in and of itself would be a galvanizing force to bring it about. But my just taking office won't change anything. The wave that would bring that about, my advocacy going around the state, would help to end it.
Thanks, Gary, for that response. Next up is Farmars. Go ahead and unmute yourself and let's hear your comment or question.
Hi, yes, thank you very much. I just joined a little bit late, so I'm not sure if this has been brought up yet or not, but I wanted to put in the chat a link to the message from Left Unity Slate candidate for US Senate, John Parker, who is on a fact-finding trip right now at the front lines in Donbass and is visiting Russia as well. So I think it's really, really a good thing that all the groups here, both the ballot qualified parties, Peace and Freedom, and the Green Party, as well as the membership parties like Party for Socialism and Liberation, Socialist Unity Party, and others are participating in this. It's likely, I think, that you will see in very short order some other progressive organizations promoting the Left Unity Slate. So look out for that maybe as soon as tomorrow or Tuesday.
Great, thanks for those comments. I didn't hear a specific question to anyone, but if there was anything in there that prompts some thoughts from our panelists, please go ahead and jump in. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next participant, Matt Owen. Go ahead and unmute and let's hear your comment or question.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be with you today. As always, I am in front of the flag of peace, bearing the Star of Liberation, which has been California's liberation flag since 1836. I am in Peace and Freedom Party. I'm also in the California Independence Movement, which puts me on the left edge of both, shall we say. Our movement is for the independence of California from the US. We have links with the Scottish National Independence Movement, with the Welsh movement, with the movement for the independence of Catalonia and of the Basque Country and so on. And we can bring those links to you. The main thing I want to bring your attention to is the Summit of the Americas. It's going to be next month. The State Department, US State Department's putting it on in LA. In response, there will be a workers' Summit of the Americas held between the 10th and 12th in Tijuana, okay, unconquered California. And I would urge those of you who can attend in person to do so. There also, I believe, is an online attendance option, which I myself intend to use if it's available. This would be an excellent place for you to present your report from your fact-finding trip to Donbass. And I'm sure that the folks there who haven't been invited to the Summit of the Americas, and there will be representatives from Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua who were not invited at this summit being held, of the Workers' Summit being held in Tijuana. I would urge as many of the Left Unity people as possible to attend. Like I say, if I can't make it in person, I intend to do it online and to build those links. And with those, I'll be bringing the links to the unrecognized nations, including indigenous nations, that we in the California Independence Movement have been building and present to you.
Matt, if you could wrap it up in a few more seconds.
Absolutely. For this election, I am urging folks in the California Independence Movement to vote up the Left Unity Slate, which represents our values to a T. There is a California National Party that's being built. And hopefully by the time of the next election, they will have earned a seat at your table of Left Unity. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that comment. And again, if that spurred any thoughts from our panelists, please go ahead and jump in. We have another participant on stack. Jason Ackerman, go ahead. You'll have to unmute.
Hello. So I'm wondering how many of the candidates have any prior experience in an elected position, you know, or in local government, perhaps, be it, you know, neighborhood council or city council or some sort of executive position. Thanks.
It sounds like a question for everyone. Gary, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, I got elected. I was registered green at the time. I was elected to the Center Joint Unified School District Board of Trustees. That happened in 2006. I served from 2006 to 2010. Did not win re-election. That's a whole other story in and of itself as to how that happened. But I have run for local office. Ran for the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors in 2012 and 2016. I missed making a runoff in 2016 by 1.5 percentage points. So that would have been exciting if that had happened. But I have been active in local politics. I have also been either a treasurer or a manager for a few other candidates running for local offices. We had one of our members here in Sacramento County, the other co-coordinator for the Sacramento County Green Party, Nicole Castor, ran for the Citrus Heights City Council. I campaigned for her. Eric Frame, who was running against Richard Pan, the mandatory vaccination bill author. I was his treasurer and campaigned for him as well. So I've been active here locally.
Great. Are there any other candidates who would like to answer this question? Laura, Mohammed, Meghann, Luis. Meghann, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute to find the raise hand. Yeah, I think my time specifically in a political office has been much more limited. Just like Gary had said, I worked as treasurer and on several campaigns, both at the state level. I worked previously on Natalie's last campaign. I've been treasurer for presidential campaigns. And I've been both a trustee, secretary, and currently the president for my union in running for that, as well as being on the state central committee and the county central committee for peace and freedom on multiple occasions. This will be my first foray into like statewide elections as running as the candidate, but it is not a new arena to me of running in these sorts of things.
Thanks, Meghann. Laura or Mohammed, or if Luis is still on?
Well, I'll just say, actually, speaking for Luis, he was the poet laureate of Los Angeles or something. I'm not sure I have the exact title for some years. And my focus has been inside the Green Party at the county level, Alameda County. I live in Oakland, and particularly the Green Party of California. And in terms of work experience, I've worked for big corporations, small businesses, nonprofits, on staff at unions, and some county jobs. So I've had a lot of varied work experience, but my political work has been within the Green Party and as a candidate.
Thanks, Laura. Mohammed, go ahead. Can't hear you, Mohammed. Maybe you're muted.
Sorry for that. I was elected chair of Peace and Freedom Party from Kern County in 2010 to 2012. And then I ran for a state senate. I'm also running a nonprofit in California. So this is my pretty much experience and background.
What's the position you have now with Peace and Freedom Party?
I'm a chairman. Currently, I'm a chairman of Kern County. Yes.
Thank you, Mohammed. I don't see any other hands raised right now, so I interject a question on my mind. Can each of you tell us something you'd like citizens, voters to do over the course of this next month? What are the key talking points? How can they get involved with your campaign? Anything you'd like to tell us about actions we can take over the next month as we lead up to the election? And is there anyone who would like to go? Mohammed, go ahead.
Yeah, I think being a unity between Green Party and Peace and Freedom Party, we should combine, run some ads on social media, and we should spread our unity slate in this month. So this will encourage and will inform the voters. Nowadays, 20 million people got our information, and we should definitely have some sort of meeting where we can contribute and we can have a combined advertisement as a unity slate. This is my suggestion.
Thank you, Mohammed. Gary, I see your hand. Go ahead.
I would agree with what Mohammed is saying. I think possibly creating a fund where we could put on ads for the Left Unity Slate, direct them to leftunityslate.org, I think is one way to go. For my campaign personally, again, as I mentioned at the outset, I'm about to run cable TV ads. I think one of the ways that we can increase our percentage of the vote and have a chance of making it into the top two is to try and swing disaffected Democrats and coming over and voting for us. And so that's what I'm targeting. The cable ads are going to be on MSNBC, CNN, people who are already news junkies who are progressive leaning but are not happy with the status quo. They have to cross over and vote for us if we're going to become more viable. And that's what I'm aiming towards. And so if people can help between now and then, I have a bunch of flyers. If any of your local parties are going to be doing any tabling, email me, Blenner with the number 4 sos@gmail.com. Email me. I will send to your local county party flyers if you're going to be doing that. Otherwise, if you can just contribute to my campaign, I have a GoFundMe set up on my Facebook page. Donations are welcome. The more donations I get in from people, the more TV ads I can put on, and the more we can get our message out. But I just want to emphasize, I totally agree with Mohammed. If we can set up a fund that will be for all of us, that will direct people to vote for the Left Unity Slate, that's an even better way to go.
Great, thank you. Meghann, I see your hand.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add, because I think, the just because Laura and I were both there yesterday. God, I can't believe it was only yesterday. But that two of us went out to go speak. I mean, I think there was the estimates that it was about 700 people, I think it was 700, turned out in downtown San Francisco to go march to defend Roe. And these were predominantly, overwhelmingly high school and college women who turned out for this, who I think it was beautifully said that while we were along the march route is, you're not the future, you're the present. And so really kind of also getting to connect there. And I think we've been trying to focus on expanding more onto our social media and being able to turn out at actions. And because the people there who are in motion, that both of us spoke about the campaign, our campaigns and the Left Unity Slate, and the importance of it, and and encourage people to go tell the others. And so also kind of spreading it through those who are getting active for the first time, that there is a choice that they can be making, and that's something that they can share. And just kind of using this other venue, as a great opportunity for mobilizing young people into the struggle.
Thanks for that, Meghann. Laura, over to you, and then followed by a question from Norma.
Yeah, and it was great to for Meghann and I both to be there yesterday, and I think it was yesterday. It seems like so much happens. But forward to your lists, I was just going to check. Maybe I can ask: is the PDF of the Green Voter Guide posted yet? Forward that, and whatever, like the people that you email, just make sure that they vote. A lot of people skip it on June 7th, but just something friendly like reminding you to vote on June 7th, and here are some recommendations that you might like, and you can point them to the leftunityslate.org, which is a bare bones way to get to the candidates that are on that. If there is that link, and maybe go to acgreens.org, I see in the chat, it is there. So go there, get that link, put at the top, feel free to forward, because word of mouth, and when they hear from somebody that they know, that does mean something, and it may jog people to vote, and to vote for candidates that will actually help them in the world. Over.
Okay, next, Norma, I see your hand up. Go ahead and ask your question or state your comment.
Right. Does everybody know about Voters Edge? If you don't, take a look. I found it, I run for school board every couple of years to put my doctrine out there a lot. And I find that it enables me to organize my thinking each time I go into it, which is each time I run. Things change and language changes, and being able to answer their questions. It's created by League of Women Voters, which is very middle ground, middle politics, but it's still a good source. If people want to find out what's on the left, they can be recommended to go look at your site on Voters Edge. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that comment. I see another hand. Anne, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Oops. Hi, I have a question for Meghann. Meghann, how do your fellow bus drivers feel about you running? Wait, can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
I
oh,
can
sorry.
hear you.
Yeah, we heard
I was
you.
gonna say, no one said anything.
Go ahead, Meghann, go ahead and jump in.
Sorry. I mean, to be honest, it's been a pretty entertaining thing, because I did do a lot of, as all of us know, that you have to gather a whole bunch of signatures for it. And people were absolutely shocked when I was gathering signatures, and were incredibly excited. And I think when everybody turned around and looked, I think I've had people coming up all week as they've realized, they were like, wait, I saw you in there. Like you're on the ballot. I hadn't, and have been, there's been just so much excitement over it, that actually my vice president was like, we need to figure out how to do some campaign and fundraising events. And so I really enjoy the excitement that's coming out of there. And so it has been a lot of enthusiasm and wanting to really get behind it. So.
All right, thank you. I also had a question for Meghann. I was curious, I heard your background and some of the things you're interested in. How how does that help you decide that you wanted to run for treasurer as opposed to some other office?
I guess a little bit of it's, sorry, I don't know if people can hear the sirens in the background. I'm really.
We can hear them, but it's not too bad. It's
Okay.
It's probably louder for you than us.
It's much, much louder for me. This is what I get because I live downtown in the Tenderloin. Yeah, I mean, I can't lie and say that it wasn't, that somebody did approach me and ask if this was something that I could consider. And, I do think it's, rather than, I think, jumping for something bigger, that this does feel like a good place to be starting with it. But when it was brought up to me, it was looking into, that I actually took the time and went and looked at what they sit on, what does the treasurer oversee? Going along with Laura was talking about kind of how these two positions are different facets of the money question in the state. And I was looking at it and seeing the fact that this ties into housing, like public housing and infrastructure and education and, a number, since I work so closely with a number of teachers, and I know several of the people, including Natalie Hreezy, who's a member of their executive officers, of the fact that the state has been underfunding education, and that there was a big announcement that came out that it's something like it's millions of dollars that have been shortchanged to schools in San Francisco, but also throughout the state, and particularly around special education. And so actually really being in a position to be like, no, this is what is supposed to be going to the schools and actually making it happen. And, because of where I live, that it's like, that's why the issue of housing and providing, support for healthcare and especially mental health care, as I live downtown in the Tenderloin, and really supporting people who are struggling. And so getting to, the idea of being on a board that can help and really, for everything that you can do through that, of I can't do policy, but can still really advocate for what people need on the ground.
Great, thanks for that answer. The floor is open. If anyone has a question, please do raise your hand. And until someone else does, I have another question. This one's for Mohammed. Mohammed, similar question I just asked Meghann. What was it that made you decide to run for lieutenant governor specifically? But also, how do you see your role in that position? As opposed to the governor, which is someone who's always in the spotlight, and the lieutenant governor may be ready to spring into action when needed, but doesn't always have the public's attention. So if you could talk about, what you might do in those dynamics, and why lieutenant governor?
Yeah, the reason I'm running for lieutenant governor because of my background. I have a background of commerce, economics. I've done master economics, law. So we don't have an educated lieutenant governor until now, I guess, who has these three backgrounds, because these three backgrounds are needed to run state. From Gray Davis to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you see all these clown, and Democrats are failed. So that's why I decided to run, so I can be a good administrator. I can do things for the state. I ran for California governor in 2010, but this time I want to reduce my status from governor to lieutenant governor.
Okay, great. Thanks for that answer.
Okay.
Next up, Vicente, Oakland Greens. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I feel the urge to say that I think this is going to be maybe an uncomfortable question, but I'd be interested in hearing the candidates' thought of production value for the presentations when they come, especially for the larger offices. I'm reminded of the line from Chris Rock's movie Head of State, where Bernie Mac is looking at me, he's dressing still like he's going to the barbecue, when he said, dress for the job you want, not the job that you have. I'm just making, and also inside of production, and I hate to say it, but when we're navigating this corrupt system, thinking of coming to these events as if it was a show. So that means that you would have some sort of stage production in the sense that you would be on a stage, even though it's a virtual one. But I'd be interested again in the candidates' thoughts about production value. Thank you.
Great question. Anyone like to go first responding to that? And how about we go ahead and take the next question, Jason Ackerman, but as you're thinking about the previous one, and we can do two at once. Jason, go ahead.
So I know the hot button issue right now in California is homelessness. However, I think that the real major issue for California is transportation. So if elected, what would you do to help better connect the urban cores with the suburbs and the urban cores to one another? Where do you stand on the high-speed rail and all that fun infrastructure stuff?
Okay, great. So we got two questions on the table. One first about, how you present yourself and push your ideas out and production value, and then a policy question about transportation. Go ahead, Gary.
Well, I was going to answer the Oakland Greens question. I'm in total agreement that I think we need to have a more professional outlook on what we're doing. I think I said earlier that I'm putting on TV commercials that I think look very professional, and that would give off the impression to voters that we are serious about what we're doing. In my commercials, I tell everybody to look at the Left Unity Slate, but it is a commercial that would be like any other that the major corporate candidates are putting out there. Obviously, we don't have the money that they do, and it's on a much smaller scale, but I completely agree that we need to carry ourselves forward and produce as if we were very serious candidates. So I was answering the previous question. So
okay. Any other candidates would like to answer? Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, I agree, despite the what's in my background. I'm not exactly looking like I'm in a studio, but I do think about what I'm going to wear, when I go someplace, and it's often at a rally. It's okay to have a t-shirt and with the Green Party on it and stuff like that. But I think, well, which one would be the best and all of that, because people want to look at you, want you to be serious. And one of the things that I found in this campaign, almost more than any other campaign that I've been involved with, is people so much wish we could and would win, and so they want us to look the part and be the part. I also wanted to talk about transit. Studies have shown that in terms of mass transit, the more that rich people use a particular form of transit, the higher it's subsidized by the state. In other words, if it's something like Caltrains, if it's a train, it gets more money than if it's BART. And if it's BART, it gets more money than if it's a bus. And so it has to do with how rich the people are. And the richer the people are that use it, the more money it gets from the state. So that would be another cool thing to audit. How is all that working? And I come from Michigan. And so I have a commitment that I don't wish on everybody, because the system is made for cars. You virtually have to have a car. But bikes, buses, buddies, and because it's Bay Area, BART. But if all my buddies did what I do, I couldn't do what I do because it's set up for cars. But I think that we absolutely, when we think about the climate change and stuff like that, the way we move ourselves from place to place is huge. And so that would be a good thing to to look at and to start subsidizing the buses. Over.
Great, thank you, Laura. Meghann, over to you, and a quick time check before you start. It's 6:32. We started a couple minutes late, so we can go a couple more minutes. But stack is closed, and this will be the chance for any candidate who wants to say a few more words in closing. So Meghann, go ahead and answer the question, and then say your closing bit, and we can go around the room for anyone who has any last words, if you do. Thank you.
I'll try and do this. I'll try and do it pretty quick. I mean, I think everybody else has also touched on about that production value, about the question of having the degree of professionalism. But I think also a little bit with what Laura was going with is that I think there's also, I think it's striking the balance, because also the fact that we're not elite politicians, we're working people. And so also having, that there's having that degree of professionalism, but also not, setting up that we're walking into things in suit. I bought slacks so that I finally now have slacks to look more professional and going along with things, and trying to get nice jackets so that I look a little more put together. But it's also still, I drive a school bus for a living, and I'm unapologetic about that. I love what I do. And that, that I think it's also important that people know that, we're one of them as well for getting involved into this. So I do think it is a little bit of striking the balance between being professional and being seen as serious, but also, still holding on to who we are. And I think the issue with transportation, again, Laura touched on it a little bit for talking about really the funding of the buses. I think it's also, I think that's one of the other questions that comes into here, of the fact that people can't afford to live where they work. So that it's dealing with housing and dealing with transportation and how they're interconnected. Because a large number of my coworkers, because wages are so high in San Francisco, but they commute from Antioch and from Sacramento. And drive in to work 10-hour split days, and then commute 2-3 hours back home each direction. And so I think it's actually, it's important to kind of recognize about how everything is interconnected, I think, between transportation, living wages and affordable housing, and how to make it so that it's actually, people can live in the places where they work, and it's sustainable to travel from place to place. And I will just leave it there.
Thanks so much, Meghann. Mohammed, over to you.
Yeah, transportation and housing is a vital role. It's very important for the community, for our Californian, and we are suffering. We are like a capital of homeless at this point. If you see Los Angeles downtown or San Francisco, so now the question is how we will fulfill this budget crisis, and in order to do that, we should have a movement that we should not get into international wars or help international community that much. Like $33 billion are given in Ukraine, and now more we are going to do, because at home we are suffering. At home, people are poor. They're unable to take care of health and housing and education, and a lot of burden here. So first we have to see our California, our United States, and then we can definitely keep a little balance overseas. So I'm against war, and we are for peace. The second thing is coming to the Left Unity Slate. We should be combined and see if there's any compatibility of our thoughts or socialism and welfare things to each other. We should invite other groups and other political party, whether they are qualified or they're on the ballot or not. But we should, after this election, we should be serious to make the third party stronger by uniting and inviting other groups. So this is my second point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Laura, go ahead.
Just real quickly, that this is the first time that we've done this Left Unity Slate, and I think we're making a real solid start, and I'm also looking forward to doing that in the future. And I see that the The voter guide was posted a couple of times in the chat, so please use that since it has all of the statewide, it has statewide candidates as well as measures and things like that. But hasta la victoria siempre.